The last one. Not just the people in this room, everyone. I want to live in this mountain, but you're all going to bother me. So I'm letting you all go. Sorry, just has to be the way it is. Just, sorry. And I came to this realization because, tired of people with their selfies and their loud voices and all of this obnoxious stuff. Really and truly all I need is my coffee, my internet, my Netflix, and occasionally I like Major League Oh, crud, I realize there's a flaw in my argument here. This plan is just completely verstoos. I've got an imperative to protect these guys because they bring me coffee, internet, Netflix, and entertainment in the case of Ichiro down there. And really and truly, I can't survive without them. So I'm left with this need and responsibility to look after them, and they're left with a need and responsibility to look after me. It's a promise we make to each other. It's unwritten, it's unspoken, but it exists. It's small, but it can grow into some of the greatest things that have ever occurred in our history. You don't believe me? April 15, 2013. There was an explosion at the Boston Marathon finish line. And in that day, people remember the two men who chose hate over respect and love, but I remember something different. I remember that day compassion won. That day, those who finished the marathon ran from the finish line to the nearest hospitals to donate blood. The volunteers and the yellow jackets jumped over the fences. This was a small act, an individual act of heroism that many of us would not have accomplished on any regular day. But this day, when it was needed most, we did it. That's what we do as individuals. It's what we do for each other. So what do we do as a society? We stand together in moments of peril and torment, such as the Great Depression. We come up with new programs, new social institutions that we can rely on. You'll notice that in this picture, most of those faces, they look young, but even more of them look old. That's because in that era, there wasn't a retirement age. When you were done working because your body could no longer support you doing the job you were supposed to do, you were done. You were living in the gutter. You were lining up at these soup kitchens hoping for a free meal. If you take a chance to read The Real Deal, published in 1990, the Social Security Act was published, was signed into law, and it started out as a tax of 1% on $3,000 that you earned annually. That's about $5,000 today. The actual Social Security tax and Medicare combined is much greater than that. But even then, what people said about it was a hoax, and they may have been right, because that was a lot of money. They may have been right, but it's our promise to one another that we try and look after those who are less capable. I don't think it was a fraud. I think the intentions were genuine, and that the hopes of that bill were to reinforce that singular motto. It's what we do for each other. More recently, the Affordable Care Act was passed. And at the 5-year mark, New England Journal of Medicine published an article called The Affordable Care Act at 5 years. And you can see that it being passed in 2010, we had a drop of 4% in uninsurance rate. That's roughly 3 million Americans. That's 3 million Americans that don't have to decide between paying their house bills or making sure that their children get the proper medical care for crooked teeth or leukemia. That's 3 million Americans that don't have to worry that tomorrow they may not be able to pay for everything they need. That's one little block off their backs helping them. For 3 million Americans, I think that's a fairly good deal. And yet, Obamacare has been called the worst piece of legislation in the last half century. I disagree with that. There are far worse legislations that have been passed. But why? Why would you call against it? Because there's this promise we have. And it requires that we all stand up and work together. So even though this is a great act, there's a voice in the back of your head saying, we have to keep people working. Just keep them moving. That's why it's said it's horrible. I disagree with it, but we still need the voice of reason occasionally saying, get up, do your part, because it's what we do for each other. So what's next? What's next after Social Security? After Obamacare? What's next? Well, the next promise. The next step. Just like those who ran from the finish line to the hospitals. You take your time. You take that first step. You say, I'm going to look out for everybody in the room, even though I don't want to. Even though I know that it's against every fiber of my being to do it. I'm going to take that promise. You're all my responsibility. Because it's what we do for each other. And then the next step comes. And you just keep moving. You take that first promise and you see where it takes you.